You know what one of the most powerful inventions in human history is? Not money, banks, because money was just a tool, but banks became the system that controls it. So how did it all begin? To understand this, we first need to answer one question. What was there before banks? Thousands of years ago, people didn't have banks. Trade was entirely based on the barter system. So, a man would try to trade the fabric he had in exchange for a live animal. But this system had a major problem. People's needs didn't always match at the same time. That's why, over time, people came up with something more practical. Money. The first coins appeared around the 7th century BC in the Lydia. Gold and silver coins. Trade was now much easier. But a new problem emerged. Where would you store your money? This question led people to search for a solution, and thus the first bank idea emerged. How did the first bank idea emerge? People were looking for safe places to store their money, and they found the solution in an unexpected place: temples. Especially during the periods of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, temples were considered the safest places because no one dared to harm sacred sites. People would leave their gold and money there. Over time, the priests didn't just store it, they also began to lend money. This was the first step toward modern banking. The interest and lending system, the fast credit system, also emerged during this period. For example, a merchant would borrow money to carry out trade. Then he would repay that money with interest. This system developed especially in the Mesopotamia region. In fact, the earliest credit agreements written on clay tablets have been discovered. In other words, the ancestors of the bank contracts you sign today date back thousands of years. And this process gradually evolved over time, transformed into the Middle Ages and the first real banks. As time progressed, trade grew. It was no longer just cities, but trade between countries. At this point, banks became even more important. In particular, the cities of Italy became the center of this activity. Florence, Venice, Genoa. Here, the first real bankers emerged. And one of the most powerful banks of that time was Medici Bank. This bank didn't just store money. It lent money to kings, financed trade, and even influenced politics. Banks were no longer just safes, they were centers of power. And this power, over time, led to the birth of modern banking. By the 1600s, banking had completely transformed. One of the world's first modern central banks was established, Bank of England, 1694. This bank lent money to the government, regulated the issuance of money, and began to control tea. Banks were no longer just important for individuals, they became vital for governments as well. And this evolution has brought us to today. What have banks become today? Today, banks are everywhere in our lives. Our salaries are deposited into banks. We shop using cards. We buy houses and cars through loans. But there's something most people don't realize. Banks don't just store money, they create it. Yes, you heard that right. Through the loans they give, they actually create new money in the system. This situation further increases the influence and power of banks within the system. But the truth is, banks won't disappear easily because they are not just financial institutions, they are the backbone of the global economy. And that's why banks today, they have become the center of our lives.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave a comment.